Now, your chances of being mauled by a slug are low, but they are never zero. Hey there, kiddos, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, and that you are having a great day. And in today's video, we're going to be sitting back with the super duper squeaky chair, relaxing and having a little conversation with all of you guys about RuneScape, Magic the Gathering, and the Trust Thermocline that I think is wonderful to study in a very specific situation. You see, quite a while ago now, actually, I made a video on the channel going over the Trust Thermocline, what it was, what effects it could have on a business, product, IP, etc. It is, to summarize, the decline of a player base, the decline of a user base, when it comes to the Trust Thermocline is very slow and then very rapid. And the players who leave, in the same sense, also have their trust in a company erode slowly. And then there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, and their distrust of the game is rapid. And once that Trust Thermocline is hit, from a user side perspective, it's often permanent, with you hitting that super low, just absolute rock bottom amount of desire to engage with whatever it is you've lost trust in. Basically, it is the point of no return, the swirling of the drain, so to speak, for your tolerance for a given IP, a given brand, a given company. And we've talked about this before. There have been several card games in the past that have experienced an absolute erosion of the player base. Video games, famously, the Assassin's Creed franchise has really hit the, well, that point with its supposedly primary players. Borderlands hit it pretty hard with Borderlands 4. There's countless examples I can probably list if you give me enough time. But basically, it's the idea that once the players are done, once they've had enough and they're unlikely to come back. But in today's video, I'd like to talk about an exception to that idea, because very rarely can I think of a company, a brand, anything, a game that has lost a significant chunk of its player base, a really significant chunk of its player base, and then not long after managed to not only get a lot of those people back, but grow to become even larger than it was before with the right push. And then we'll bring this around to Magic the Gathering and my worries and hopes for its future. So let's talk about RuneScape, the MMO sensation that's sweeping the nation. And right now, RuneScape is in a very good spot. There's been a lot of really major updates. A lot of new content has been put out for the game, not just for paying members. The free-to-play side of RuneScape is also looking really good right now. There's a lot of cool reasons to pick the game up and give it a try. If you have not tried old school RuneScape, I cannot recommend it enough. Maybe not RuneScape 3, but I confess that I have not touched that in a very long time, basically since launch. But, you know, to get back on track, while RuneScape is currently in a really good spot, it's bigger than ever. It's got loads of really cool content creators out there that I really waste a lot of time watching. Once upon a time, that was not the case. Once upon a time, RuneScape was very much in danger of losing everything. All of its players just walking out the door. And that happened in 2012 with a little update I like to call the evolution of combat. And boy, oh boy, was this a contentious update. One of the largest update to the game at the time, and they had a good reason for doing it. You know, RuneScape was, even by this point, a very old game. You know, it was dated at the time. And Jagex, the company behind RuneScape, was interested in bringing it, maybe not to the ultra-modern, but updating it and improving it. And one of the things they wanted to improve was the combat system of the game. So they started working on this concept called the evolution of combat, which was a total rework, a total restructuring of the combat system. And they put a lot of effort into this, you know, from what I understand. And it was like in development for a while, including open beta development where people could test it out for like 6 months, I think, half a year. Um, and it was a really huge overhaul, a huge change to the game that Jagex was very confident about, and some of the playtesters were even very optimistic for. But once it came out, once it launched, keep in mind, RuneScape at this point was already not doing great. There were other things going on with it, some other changes happening to the game itself. But the evolution of combat, in a time when player trust in Jagex was fairly low, not super low, but fairly low, and people's overall optimism about RuneScape's future was not at the highest. The evolution of combat hit the RuneScape player base like a fucking brick hits your cat. And it just devastated those fucking players, man. They left in droves, okay? Um, I don't know if it's like an actual number, but I've seen it said online that as much as 25% of the player base left as a direct result of the evolution of combat. That is a lot of players, okay? I cannot stress that enough. That is a huge number of players. And when you lose that kind of volume of your customers, because players, yeah, sure, a lot of them were probably free to play, but plenty of them were probably paying members. When you lose that kind of chunk of your audience, that can be fucking devastating. Period. And it wasn't just the players, content creators, really big piece of the community. Most people were super hyper negative about it when it came out. And it wasn't just the initial 25% dump. And, don't go quoting me. Apparently that was like a number from Jagex themselves. It could have been higher, it could have been lower. I don't know. I'm not a historian for this kind of thing. But besides the initial 25% dump, there were people who had like petered out, like left over the course of the next year just because they weren't backpedaling. Their friends were leaving. And RuneScape was not getting better with evolution and combat. So it wasn't just a huge chunk leaving all at once. It was more people leaving the game over the following months, which was a huge deal. Now, what Jagex ended up doing was, besides panicking, was they eventually ended up releasing old school RuneScape as it was back in 2007. And this was in part due to a huge community push from content creators who created petitions, got all their viewers to like really rally behind them on the forums, talking about how much they want the old RuneScape back before the evolution of combat. And so a year later, early 2013, Jagex launched old school RuneScape. And instead of just undoing Evolution of Combat, they would release a second game. So they had RuneScape 3 and Old School RuneScape running concurrently. And it was a huge success. A lot of the people who were indeed chased away by Evolution of Combat and the subsequent updates came back not because RuneScape had improved, but because Jagex had given these people who had lost all faith in the company, who had lost all faith in RuneScape, Jagex had given them exactly what they were asking for. And yeah, it took a lot of effort. It was pulling teeth, basically, for the company to do it. But people did return, and it was worth it. And nowadays, to wind back to the start of the video, RuneScape's bigger than it ever has been before. And old school RuneScape, the newer, older, retro way to play the game, is the primary way many fans of RuneScape engage with the game, with the IP, with the brand, etc. And it's crazy to think that it was introduced when it first dropped. RuneScape was at its lowest. It had the lowest concurrent player count at the time when old school RuneScape launched. It was at a very bad spot. And now here we are, like 13 years later, and RuneScape has not only regained the players it lost, but it's grown to be bigger than ever. And I really like to count that as a big success story for RuneScape, a company that had really seriously damaged their reputation. Jagex had absolutely obliterated the fans' trust in them, and then they managed to, a year later, bring it all back and build something bigger and better than ever before. And that's really cool. And why am I talking about this? Well, because, we've talked, very squeaky chair, I forgot. We've talked on the channel before about the trust thermocline and the potential damage that Wizards of the Coast could do to Magic the Gathering's player base. And I know it's not a one-to-one comparison. Yes, there have been players leaving the game over the course of the last 10 years. Universes Beyond has done serious damage to the game. A lot of the card designs have done serious damage to the game. There's a new Pauper card that's like disgustingly overpowered. Very loud truck passing by. A lot of damage has been done to Magic the Gathering, but it's obviously not a one-to-one comparison because more people are coming into Magic. They're not evaporating yet. There hasn't been this big release that has completely devastated the players' faith in Wizards of the Coast. If anything it would have been Magic 30, in my opinion. But Magic 30 did not turn out to be the proverbial final nail in the coffin. The what did I say earlier? Brick to the cat? Yeah, something like that. It didn't devastate the player base much the same way that Evolution of Combat did for RuneScape. And so if that didn't do it, I very much doubt anything Wizards puts out in the near future, at least, will. A lot of loud trucks. I've got to get a window cam, like a truck cam for you guys, so you guys can see what I'm hearing. But anyway, where was I? Yeah, so no, I don't think that there's going to be a huge player base collapse in the near future. I fear that it could happen still. Wizards could surprise me and release some god-awful product that completely destroys Magic the Gathering. But even if that does, I think the solution has already been built into the game. You see, when Evolution of Combat and RuneScape 3 came out way back in the day, back in 2012, there wasn't an existing alternative. There wasn't a better way to play the game at the time. There wasn't old school RuneScape. For Magic the Gathering, however, there are built-in alternatives. There are ways to play Magic the Gathering that don't involve engaging with newer cards. There's old school 93, 94. There's pre-modern, which is gaining a lot of popularity. And there's other fan and niche formats that Wizards of the Coast more or less has a really hard time interacting with as a company. It's harder for them to weasel their little fingers in there and destroy it, right? So it's not a one-to-one comparison, obviously, because Magic has that safety net, that kind of format safety net. There's alternative ways to play the game. But let's just imagine for a minute that there was a catastrophic loss of players and Wizards of the Coast was forced to look at the nuclear option of starting fresh. Would they do that? Could they do that? And I think the answer is no. I think in a situation where modern Magic dies completely, it would be very difficult for Wizards of the Coast as a company to pick up the pieces and start fresh. And I say that for two reasons. One, rebranding has not been very successful for card games in the past. Once they have gotten that reputation for failure, it's very difficult to recover from that. Looking at you, MetaZoo. All right? And two, even if modern Magic stops being played and Wizards of the Coast loses its primary customers, as I've said, there's so many ways to play the game that don't involve actually engaging with modern Wizards of the Coast product that are very popular. Again, I'm very impressed at the pre-modern numbers I've seen online. It's actually quite impressive. So I think, sure, it's not a one-to-one scenario. It's not like Jagex resetting the game and starting fresh and running two concurrent games. I don't think there's going to be a Magic equivalent of Yu-Gi-Oh's Rush Duels where they have a slightly different way to play the game, right? But I also think in some ways that makes it more dangerous for Wizards of the Coast, because if they do lose that player base, that customer base buying the new products, if they do lose that, again, because I don't think it's going to happen. This is all hypothetical, okay? Just so we're clear. I don't think it's going to happen. Magic 30 didn't kill the player base, the customer base, the collector base. I very much doubt anything will. But if it did, Wizards would be more screwed now than Jagex was in 2012, because players have alternatives, not just in other card games, but in Magic itself. There are tried and true and tested formats that players will play and have played for decades without any involvement from Wizards of the Coast whatsoever. And I think more than anything, that should keep WotC employees up at night, knowing that fans aren't forced to engage with modern sets. Crazy stuff, right? So yeah, I just wanted to talk about, like, it's a good story. Jagex losing a lot of its players and then gaining them back and then some. It's a good story. It serves to remind you that, yeah, it's easy to be all doom and gloom when it comes to bad decisions seen in your card game of choice, your hobby of choice even, because Jagex, RuneScape, it's a video game. But, just because things like the Trust Thermocline do exist and, can have a serious impact on products, IPs, brands, etc., it doesn't mean that every time someone loses all hope for an IP or a product they're engaging with, that doesn't mean it's always going to turn out the same way. There's going to be all kinds of different factors going into account when looking at different situations. What's going on with Magic right now with Universes Beyond and collector boosters and serialized cards and Mark Rosewater still talking online. It's not the exact same as what happened back in 2012 with RuneScape. It would be silly to think that the outcomes could be the same if the same events occurred. But I don't know. I wanted to share that story with you guys, talk about RuneScape a bit. RuneScape's great. You should try it out. It's a lot of fun. And I hope in 10 years' time I get to say that about Magic the Gatherings. Reset old school Magic the Gathering card game. Fun stuff. Anyway, that's all I got for you kiddos today. Please like, share, subscribe. Check out the Discord, the Patreon, the TCG player. Did I say to comment? Leave a comment down below whether or not you found this video interesting. And if you're interested in the evolution of combat itself, because there is a lot of cool channels out there that make history videos for it, search on YouTube, because there are a lot of RuneScape channels dedicated to talking about that subject. It's a fascinating bit of video game history. But that's all I got for you kiddos today. Ciao!